everybody, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are listening from, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the Wheel of Intersectionality, where a podcast that is a heavily evidence-based, intersectional, and always rethinking woman. I'm Daniel, and I'm always joined by my co-host, Yvette.
Hey everyone! If you are new here, buckle up. We spin a big wheel every month to tackle how intersectionality shows up in real women's life. And as usual, let's spin our wheel of intersectionality to see what our topic will be today.
Ooh, landed on one of my favorites actually. The deprivation of reproductive autonomy for women in China and the United States.
Oh yes, I like this topic too. But first, I got a burning question for the audience. If you suddenly became pregnant today, what would scare you the most? The law or family shame? What limits your body the most? Or would any of those even be a concern for you? That is exactly where today's conversation begins.
Here's our statement for this problem. While institutional mechanisms differ between US and China, marginalized women in both contexts face a systemic deprivation of reproductive autonomy through the convergence of policy barriers and socio-cultural stigma.
Think of intersectionality as a web of many identities, and every thread is a different part of women's identity. Race, class, sexuality, so on. When one thread pulls, the whole structure tightens, restraining women of their choices. Today, we'll show how two different webs built by different systems are somehow both able to trap women in similar ways. Before we dive in, let's clear up some key terms. What is intersectionality and reproductive autonomy?
So intersectionality is the framework for understanding how social and political identities, such as race, class, sexuality, and more, all overlap and compound to create unique experiences of discrimination or privilege. Reproductive autonomy is the right to decide if, when, and how to have children, free from coercion, violence, or discrimination.
With the key terms in place, let's dive in. Alright, let's start with the United States, and the pivotal legal moments that brought us here.
But before we try to understand the current moment, we have to travel way back to the 1800s. In 1873, Congress passed the Comstock Act, the first federal law to classify contraceptives and abortion medication as obscene, banning their distribution by mail and even criminalizing written materials about contraception. By the year 1900, abortion was a felony in every state. Women had neither tools nor knowledge. They had no ideas about their own bodies.
Nearly a century later, in 1973, Roe v. Wade extended the constitutional right to privacy to abortion, striking down a Texas law and legalizing the procedure nationwide. For the first time, women had a constitutionally protected right for their reproductive autonomy, opening doors for bodily self-determination, career planning, and many more.
But Roe's promise was soon diminished. In 1992, Planned Parenthood v. Casey allowed states to impose restrictions, as long as they didn't create an undue burden. This was a clear opening for trap laws, targeted regulation of abortion providers, which required unnecessary privileges from patients and imposed unnecessary safety requirements for clinics. Later, from 2010 to 2025, states passed over 288 new abortion restrictions, and trap laws shut down at least 70 clinics nationwide. Technically, abortions stayed legal, but in practice, it's practically inaccessible. This inaccessibility hits the hardest for low-income and rural women.
In 2022, Roe's promise was destroyed. The Supreme Court's decision overturned Roe in a 6-3 ruling, declaring that the Constitution no longer protects the right to abortion. Overnight, over half of U.S. states banned or severely restricted the procedure.
After Roe v. Wade in 1973, the web slowly tightened all around. The thread of constitutional protection completely snapped, and more threads pulled cruelly on the woman through different intersections. To really grasp these women's struggles, let's call them in. Our caller today spotlights Maria Lopez, calling in from Texas. Hey Maria, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, I'm so glad to be here. When you talk about dogs, I feel it in my bones. Where I live, the nearest clinic was 9 hours away in New Mexico. There are no buses, no trains from my town, and I don't have a car. I had to borrow someone's, and that meant explaining everything. All in, it cost me more than $1,000. With my ectopic pregnancy, I had no choice, but I kept thinking, why me?
Maria, thank you for trusting us with that. I want to go back to something you said. You had to borrow a car. which means explaining what you had to do and where you were going. So, on top of managing the medical emergency alone, you also had to manage other people's perception of you. This isolation is its own kind of weight, right?
And even worse, did anyone around you really understand what you're going through? Or were you just mostly alone throughout this process?
Yeah, the weight accumulates from all the different perspectives. Despite being pretty alone, I just told people it was a family thing. I find it easier by making it sound smaller than it is.
Make it sound smaller than it is. What are you going through must be really tough, Maria. In fact, Dr. Elena Smith will be joining us today. She is a reproductive health policy researcher. Dr. Smith, as you've been listening, thoughts on what Maria just shared?
Thank you for having me. Maria's story plays out in the data hundreds of times over and over. She is experiencing something we call the triple burden. Race, class, and geography combined limit a single person at the same time. And the data is depressing. AFF found that the average interstate travel cost for abortion care is $1,367, compared to $411 for in-state access. For a seasonal worker with no car and no ability to explain her absence, Maria was forced to face all the factors at a much higher price. The system wasn't designed with her in mind, and in many ways, it was designed against her.
And the financial hit doesn't stop at travel costs, right?
Not at all. The amendment prohibits federal Medicaid funds from covering abortion, which means low-income patients are almost entirely on their own financially. Only 7 states voluntarily fill that gap. Guttmacher's research confirms that people in poverty are twice as likely to be uninsured. But the financial burden isn't random. It falls hardest on the people least equipped to handle it. When we look at the health outcome, a JAME study projected a 33% greater increase in pregnancy-related mortality for Black women under a full ban scenario. That is not a biological difference. That is what happens when structural racism, healthcare deserts, economic inequality all converge on the same body.
Wow, hearing this initially makes me feel hurt, but seeing the current systemic deprivation so many women are facing this twisted fate, I feel so hopeless and afraid. I didn't really realize thousands of women are doing the exact same thing, borrowing cars, crossing state lines, and lying about where they're doing. But when I look at myself, solving these problems are already so much to handle. So many women are facing the same problem in the same country, yet still fighting alone and being deprived in so many ways.
It is sad to see the data in real stories. In fact, 6.7 million Latinas, like Maria, currently live in abortion-ban states. The experience Maria's described isn't exceptional. It's the median reality.
So when we talk about access, we're not just talking about whether a right exists on paper, right?
Exactly. A legal right without material access is not a functioning right. For instance, geography, insurance status, lost wages, all of these are not inconveniences around the edges of the issue. They are the issue. Intersectionality is a description of multiple systems of multiple similarly different disadvantages combined on the same person. Maria's story demonstrates the reality of it.
Maria, before you go, what do you want people to take away from this?
The obstacles you face are not just bad luck, they're built in from the system. I kept asking why me, but the real question is why the system makes it so much harder in the first place.
Thank you, Maria. Truly, a right on paper isn't a right in real life, and that thread transitions to what we are going to talk about next. Let's go to China.
The legal system here looks very different, but the web converges just the same. In China, the system doesn't deprive women based on race, it's marital status.
Exactly. The Public Family Planning Service network has long provided services exclusively for married women of childbearing age. These services include free contraceptives, IUD insertions, and counseling. However, for unmarried women, they are structurally excluded from the state-provided reproduction safety net, leaving them with no contraceptive guidance and significantly higher risks of unintended pregnancies.
Yeah, China's public system offers no systematic sex education or contraceptive guidance for unmarried youth, and unplanned pregnancies skyrocket. So, if a married woman can't get guidance from the system, what do they do when unintended pregnancies occur? They turn to private hospitals, but they are not nice either. Profit-driven private hospitals flood the internet with painless abortion ads, such as surgery today, back to school tomorrow. As a result, young women are funneled towards highly commercialized procedures. Then, when the state begins to limit the amount of abortions, those same women without contraceptive support are pushed into a desperate corner.
Young women face an endless cycle the system created, depriving them of their reproductive autonomy. Today, we scheduled a call with someone who lived inside that loop, Jiayue, who's 22, single, and calling in from China. Jiayue, welcome to the show.
Hi guys, I'm Jiayue. So glad to be on the show with you guys.
Jiayue, welcome.
Hey there.
So as I've been listening, this cycle is stripping me of my autonomy. I realized that my body was only considered legitimate if there was a husband's name attached to it. Even more, my past relationships demonstrated this similarly. It was always dependent on the man.
Yikes, it sounds like you're always being controlled. What did this exactly look like?
To start, my boyfriend didn't like condoms, so I just hoped for the best. I tried a calendar method because it seemed natural, but looking back, the side effects of pills, the weight gain, the mental exhaustion, it was all on me. Even when we did use protection, I spent every month in what I call phantom pregnancy anxiety. After each time we had intercourse, I was a nervous wreck, yet he was completely oblivious to all the burden I was carrying. Later, when I found out I was pregnant, I told no one for 3 days. I couldn't even tell my parents. The shame would have been unbearable. In China, everything is about having face value, which is called 面子. In fact, it's not about you having a problem. You worry about making the whole family bear the crushing weight of ruined reputation. When I finally tried to find help, I realized the contraceptive service is mostly for married women of childbearing age. I was invisible to the system. Or even more, I was looked down by the system.
Yue, it is truly a devastating deprivation you are facing. According to the China Population and Development Research Center, married women account for roughly 50% of all abortions in China. 47.5% of abortion cases involve women under 25, and 19% have multiple procedures. That's the predictable outcome of denying an entire demographic access to preventive care, then offering them only commercialized intervention after the fact.
I do remember a few years ago there was someone named Zhang Ming who really wanted to expose the system for this institutional exclusion, right?
Yes, Zhang Meng was a single mother denied maternity insurance simply because she wasn't married, an unspoken rule that overrides national law. She took the local government to court and won. The ruling declared the denial unlawful, but a single court victory can't dismantle the stigma woven into the administrative architecture. The gap between what the law says and what the system delivers is where millions of women fall through.
Well said. Most of us don't have Jama's courage or her resources. When I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't thinking about lawsuits. I was just trying to get through the day without my parents finding out. That's the reality for most women. You're not fighting the system. You're just trying to survive it quietly.
What if you ask friends for help, or maybe family members you can trust?
Well, I could, but some face a much worse reality, like my rural cousin. If she got pregnant, her family's reputation was ruined, according to other family members. She had to travel hours to a local back alley clinic because of connections. She told me the stigma was so pressuring. Every day she felt like a heavy weight was stuck on her back. You were treated as damaged goods before you even had a chance to breathe.
What? Damaged goods? Not even considering them as people anymore. That is just cruel. They treat you like you're sold at a marketplace. What's that idea about?
We really are treated like objects to be sold at a marketplace in this patriarchal framework. If we have an abortion, our purity value drops. And this is our market value, the only thing men care about when buying us. But married women, they're already sold to a man. If the husband makes his wife have 10 abortions, no one calls him or her immoral. It seems his right to use his goods as he sees fit.
That is a brutal double standard. Dr. Smith, where does this stem from? And why does it seem so difficult to break the stigma?
This stems from the Confucian notions of filial piety. No heir is the greatest unfilial act. This gradually became the framework where a woman's reproductive autonomy is fundamentally a family asset, not her own. The state reinforces this with a marriage requirement for healthcare, while completely disregarding the absence of sex education in public schools. The Drummond case shows us what it looks like when one woman refuses to accept the framework as permanent.
夏月, how did you get through the recovery period on your own? What's your advice to other women who are in a similar struggle as yours?
It took a long time for me to understand that I was not a moral failure. To any girl listening, you are not damaged goods. You are a person who deserves respect and care, regardless of your marital status. We need to dissolve this stigma altogether.
Wow, from phantom pregnancy anxiety to invisible walls. Well said, and thank you, Jiarue. What you've shared helps us see the web clearly. Wow, today was definitely a journey. We traveled from Texas to Shanghai.
In the United States, the web tightens on race, class, and geography, and deprives those that are either low income, women of color, or in abortion ban states, or all of those above. In China, the web tightens on marital status, age, and rural-urban location, and deprives young single women of their autonomy by limiting their preventive care and dignity. The materials of the webs are different, but the effects are convergent.
Yeah, the systems live in deprivation in many ways. And for the marginalized women, they face all this deprivation the harshest. Maria's $1,000 drive, Davia's 3 days of silence, Chamon's courtroom battle. Each of these is a manifold struggle where multiple identities meet institutional power. The evidence is unambiguous. All of it testifies to the same truth. The deprivation doesn't just take away one right, it takes away her ability to determine her own reproductive autonomy.
Our podcast believes viewing intersectionality between multiple countries will draw a bigger picture and also deepen everyone's knowledge. The web metaphor shows that whether the state wields a legal ban or a marriage certificate requirement, the outcome is stripping a woman of their autonomy. It's not a niche issue or a cultural issue. It's a global pattern of systematic deprivation of women's autonomy.
So next time you hear reproductive rights, remember, it isn't a privilege to be earned through wealth, marital status, or geography. It is a universal right that no law, economic barrier, or cultural stigma should be permitted to withhold. And as you've listened so far, we hope you now see the web, and you just might start working to untangle it.
Thank you for thinking deeply with us across borders today. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What threads do you see tightening in your own community? See you next time on Wheels of Intersectionality.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.